Okay, our next presentation will focus on the Oil Pollution Environmental Review Act, so let's begin.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Asif Iqbal. After months of hard work, countless hours of dedication, I have the distinct pleasure of delivering the final briefing for the Oil Pollution Environmental Review Act. I would like to thank my entire team, as well as our advisor, Professor Callahan, for her invaluable support. Today, I'll be covering the context of this presentation, the root problem, and a summary of the legislation, our program design, the associated budget and timeline, and our conclusion. Let's step back 2 years. On 20th April 2010, the oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico known as the Deepwater Horizon exploded. As a result of this explosion, 11 men were killed and 17 others were injured. The explosion left oil gushing from the seafloor for 3 months before the well was capped. An estimated 4.9 million barrels of oil had escaped into the ocean in this period. This environmental disaster really brought home the risks of drilling into the hearts and minds of this nation. An independent commission was formed to answer questions from this catastrophe, and they found that drilling safety standards were outdated, applicable to drilling depths and standards from 30 years ago. Some of their recommendations included the formation of a safety agency within the Department of the Interior, enacting higher safety standards before approving drilling, and dividing the responsibility of offshore leasing and resource management between separate bureaus. As a result of this last recommendation, the Minerals Management Service, formerly in charge of regulating the industry, was divided into several subdivisions. The 2 subdivisions of interest to our legislation are the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, currently in charge of leasing and evaluating oil and gas exploration plans, and the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, currently in charge of developing and enforcing safety and environmental regulations. That's quite a mouthful. Despite this administrative review, the root problem in this industry was not addressed. This problem is a lack of standardized assessment and monitoring of oil and gas drilling projects. This is due to inconsistent environmental review standards, a lack of coordination between agencies conducting this review, a low technical capacity of these agencies, and outdated environmental standards to which these drilling projects are held accountable to. The Oil Pollution Environmental Review Act seeks to address this problem by amending current legislation governing oil and gas drilling. It seeks to do so in 3 clear amendments. Firstly, to end a 30-day deadline imposed upon the Secretary of the Interior to approve or reject oil and gas drilling projects. This clause currently exists under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. Secondly, to define drilling projects as a major federal action. A major federal action is anything that significantly alters the landscape. By this categorization, drilling projects now come under the environmental review under the National Environmental Policy Act of 1970. And as a result of this act, these projects will now undergo detailed environmental analysis. Our program is designed to implement this legislation in 3 clear components: stringent assessment, coordination activities, and human capital investment. The first component looks to enact the mandatory actions in the legislation, and the other 2 recommend incremental steps in dealing with a root problem. The goal of this program design is to reduce the likelihood of oil spills by enhancing communication and coordination between industry and government. Let's take a look at each of these components individually. So with the help of my magic pointer, there we go. The first component is stringent assessment. As I mentioned earlier, this will be looking to enact the mandatory actions by posting notifications on the Federal Register. This Federal Register is a database for industry and government to update themselves on policy changes. Secondly, this component looks to enact a more stringent environmental impact statement process. This is to ensure that drilling projects are held accountable to a higher environmental standard. The total cost for this component is at $1.1 million, or 20% of our entire program budget. Secondly, we have coordination. We're looking to set up a director of offshore drilling. Together with his or her 6-member regional staff, this director will really form the command center for monitoring and regulating the entire industry. The total cost for this component comes in at slightly under $900,000. The director will slot into the existing framework of the Department of the Interior, answering directly to the Deputy Secretary. As you can see, the Department of the Interior currently governs the 2 agencies of interest, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. We mentioned earlier that there is a low technical capacity in these 2 agencies, and that brings us to our last component, human capital investment. To answer this problem of a low technical capacity, we're looking to enact a scholarship program. This scholarship program will increase the training and qualifications of existing staff. Secondly, we're looking to have selective salary increases of up to 25% for geophysicists, geologists, petroleum engineers, and inspectors working in the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. This is to better match private sector wages and retain some of the best talent in federal government. The total cost for this component comes in at $4 million. And speaking of totals, our total for the entire program is at $6 million. As you can see from this line item breakdown, the focus of our program is really on new staffing and salary increase. This timeline presents us key benchmarks in 2013. Our program will be initiated in December 2012, and by March, we aim to complete the hiring and training of the director and his regional staff. By June, we aim to complete full compliance with the notifications on the Federal Register. And by September, we aim to complete the full enrollment of our first batch of scholars into their respective universities. The program will be completely implemented by December 2013. This timeline unifies our 3 components and signifies the end of our program design. To summarize, our program is one of several possible ways of implementing this legislation. By this implementation, we generate greater accountability for both the government and the industry. We improve cooperation between federal-level agencies regulating the industry. A more stringent approval process improves foresight into drilling platforms well into their lifespan. But more importantly, the Oil Pollution Environmental Review Act answers a root problem we identified earlier. The demand for offshore drilling is always going to be present. What this legislation does is balance this demand with environmental protection. By doing so, this legislation updates drilling regulation to the 21st century, ensuring that the risk of a future oil spill is greatly reduced. I'd like to thank you for your time, and now I'll take some questions and comments.
Thank you very much for that, Asif. I was wondering a little bit about the measurements and how you would measure some of these programs that you're implementing, and especially the human capital investment.
Sure. We actually have a performance management system with several indicators over several administrative and financial departments. An example of an indicator would be the grades of the scholars we send to university. We'll actually be monitoring the grades, and there will be a benchmark set for them to achieve. So that's one example of some of the performance management measures we have in our program. Thank you for your question. Yes, Richard. This is actually a picture taken of the coast of Surfside. I believe that's in California. Thank you. Yes.
With foreign company with this new legislation, which is American?
Before any company, foreign or local, gets permission to drill, they need to get an approval process from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. This is the offshore leasing we're talking about. And the land they're drilling in is still American. Thank you.